we're back. This is John.
It's Paul.
And it's Eric.
And it's What If Geeks. And it's been a while since we've been live. We took like a whole fucking month off for spring break.
Feels like it.
Yeah. You know, we pulled the Brady and said, fuck them kids. We'll just take a whole month. So, anyway, hope you guys actually paid attention to the old content that we put up there. Kind of random stuff like what if the snap really happened and series that deserve a second chance and crap like that. Comment, let us know what you think of that. And yeah, so we are on to episode 1 of Moon Knight. That dropped yesterday. And let's see, the only thing we can say about that is really fucking weird.
The only non-spoiler review we can give it. All right.
Yeah.
Good night, Tony.
Good night, Tony. No. All right, so yeah, I didn't know what to expect with this one, but it wasn't this. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, I was totally caught off guard. By the way, it was actually just the first scene with Oscar Isaac. I was like, what the fuck is happening right now? Like, why does he have a British accent? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and I'll say this much. Like when I was growing up, like, you know, I was a big Marvel and DC fan, but like I was like mostly like mainstream Marvel DC. Like I like Spider-Man, X-Men, handfuls of Avenger comics, right? A lot of like the ancillary characters like Moon Knight and Blade and even Ghost Rider and that kind of stuff. While I like their looks, I didn't really read a whole bunch of their individual comics. I'd catch them in like crossover events. So I love the look of Moon Knight, like as Marvel's version of Batman, but I didn't know as much about him as I think I'm going to learn in this series. Yeah. I still love the look of him, but I only know he's very much like Batman for the most part in the comics, and then he's also attached to an Egyptian god. So that's all I know.
I'm the same way. I was mainstream hero, mostly DC. I liked all the Avenger stuff. I read a lot of Spider-Man. My sort of backbench Marvel character favorite was Iron Fist. But like Moon Knight I didn't get much into, and some of that other stuff. And so I always thought it was Marvel's version of Batman. And I'm like, I like Batman too much to kind of go for the low rent version. So I don't know that I've ever read a Moon Knight comic. Right.
Yeah, me either.
All right, I guess we're all in the same boat. I didn't read any Moon Knight comics either. I did look him up though, and at least read the Marvel fandom and Marvel database entries for him. He is something like a Batman in that he started out doing fighting crime on the streets and stuff, but he has some complexities to him, I think, that are part of what we saw in episode 1, which is that he's gone back and forth between having dissociative identity disorder and schizophrenia in the comics. So a little bit weird. And they didn't start at the beginning either, right? They're starting in the middle, kind of, because the Mark character that pops up or is mentioned several times in this, I mean, that's the real him, and he's some kind of mercenary that gets left for dead in the desert and then gets raised up, brought back to life, whatever, by an Egyptian god, and that's where he gets his powers from. So they're headed down that path a little bit, but they started with one of the alternate personalities in this, which really was weird, right? Yeah, so yeah, I don't know what I expected going into this, but it definitely wasn't this.
It's weird. It's not as, and this is probably purposeful, right? When they made WandaVision, episode 1 of WandaVision is like, what did I just watch? So it's not that. It's but it's intriguing enough to keep going. And I would, look, it's a Marvel show. I'm going to keep going anyway. But at least you're like, okay, well, let's go, episode 2.
Well, so here's what I'll say about this. That's this is the first Marvel or MCU series where they're starting with a character. They didn't introduce him in a movie before and then do a series. It wasn't a side character that they brought in to do a series. Netflix shows excluded. This is the first one where it's a brand new character, and the way they're introducing him is in the series. And then to make it even stranger, they're showing it, or they're introducing him from the perspective of an alternate personality, not even the actual character. It's like a really strange approach. But hey, maybe it'll pay off. I don't know. It was interesting enough for me to keep going, for sure.
Well, and that's what I was thinking too. Like when we watched it last night, when it ended, I turned to Heather. I was like, "What did you think?" And she's like, "Well, it's weird." I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "I'm not sure." She's like, "Right now, it's not my favorite." But again, we always say we have the rule of give it 2-3 episodes before we make any kind of judgment call. And I think MCU has already earned our trust many times over so far over the last 14 years or whatever. To take it from the perspective of the Steven character, who's this meek little guy that works in a museum, and to suddenly you learn what's happening to him as he learns it, it's kind of cool. I just love the little things where he kind of wakes up and he's in the middle of something that he's got no idea what the fuck's going on, and then you hear the Moon Knight character be like, "Oh great, the idiot's in charge."
Yeah. And I think the opening shots of him, at least, you don't really understand why he's doing all the things he's doing, right? He takes off the restraint. Why is there sand in his room?
Right.
I don't know if we're in the spoiler section yet or not, but he's taking stuff off the door, and you're like, okay, what's happening here? And then when he goes to bed, you're like, oh, okay, now I get it, right?
Because he thinks he sleepwalks, and that's it.
Yeah. So wrist ankle restraints, sand around the bed to see where the footsteps are, tape along the door to see if he opened it from the inside, right? All the things.
Yeah.
And then okay. No, I was gonna say he somehow lives this mundane life outside of the main character too, where he has a stupid job in a museum gift shop, and he wants to be a guide or something, but he's a total fuck up, and he's, well, for obvious reasons, late and misses work and whatever. But it's just he's a total loser.
Yeah, and there are things that happen within this. We might as well just be in spoiler thing, but the way they slowly kind of let him in on what's going on in his life, not quite slowly either, because there's that moment where after you see him going through all of that preparation for what he thinks is sleepwalking, and then he wakes up in a field where it looks like his jaw is broken, and he fixes it. And you realize and then this is where you also meet Ethan Hawke, right? He's I forget his name in this. I don't know if you got it in front of you, Eric.
Yeah, it's Arthur Harrow.
They actually show, you don't realize it at the first, but the opening scene, as they're doing that kind of opening song, is someone pours a drink, drinks it, wraps the glass up, smashes it, puts the cut glass pieces in his shoes, sticks his feet in the shoes,
and walks.
And that's the Ethan Hawke character. And he wakes up in some other country, right? Some German-speaking country.
Yeah.
And he lives in London.
Yeah, and when he wakes up, he's got no idea where he is, and he kind of walks up into the town square where what did you say his name was? Arthur
Harrow.
Harrow.
Like Harrow.
Yeah, he's he walks into the town square and basically says how they're going to save the world, and he's judging people, and he's got a tattoo of scales on his arm that actually moves. So obviously he's some type of superpowered person, right? And the first person says, okay, he's a good person, and he hugs him, lets him go, and then this old lady walks up, and the scales turn red, and he's like, I'm sorry, and she's like, I've always been good, and he said, the scales see what could happen or what will happen as well, so it's probably something you're gonna do. And they don't show it, but he basically sucks the life force out of her, because when they carry her off, she's a mummy looking thing, which
Yeah.
again, very Egyptian-esque, whatever. But
And he seems to be some sort of, like, in the town, everyone as he walks by stops, lowers their heads, tries to touch him. So he's
some type of
well-known.
shaman type of
Yeah.
whatever Egyptian, like a pharaoh, but I mean,
So
he's got power.
I don't know how much of this they're pulling in from the comic stuff, but from what I read, he was like a some kind of PhD doctorate dude who was studying like pain theory, like how to deal with pain and stuff, and he was nominated for a Nobel Prize, but then he somehow got involved with this Egyptian god stuff, Moon Knight, and he gains some powers and then thinks he can make the world a better place, and ends up becoming a cult leader. Basically, all these people are like following him as they think he's like a god or has the powers of a god.
Right. Yeah, and they sell that off pretty well just in that one little scene. But so basically, his guards come up and tell him, there's somebody was trespassing, and or somebody broke in and killed a couple of people or whatever it was that they said. And obviously they're talking about Steven, but actually they're talking about Mark Spector. But it's Steven that's now awake and watching all this. So I love that little trick he does where he's like, did he escape? And they're like, no, he's still here somewhere. And he says something, and everybody kneels down except for Steven. Yeah. And he goes, oh shit. And he goes to kneel down. And he's like, he's like, I recognize you. And of course, again, I love how I give full credit to Oscar Isaac. I mean, I've liked him in everything I've seen him in, but he does a really good job with this one episode of just kind of like not knowing what the hell's going on, but somehow convincingly like getting out of it. Like there's that whole thing where he's got a scarab and he doesn't know where the hell he got, like a little gold scarab. Yeah. He doesn't know where the hell he got it from. And Ethan Hawke's like, give me the scarab. And he's like, oh, what, this? Yeah, no, you can have it. And he goes to give it to him. And again, you hear the Moon Knight voice. Because it's whatever god it is, right? But we'll just say it's Moon Knight. This is, don't give him any.
Khonshu, I think it's called.
Yeah. So it's that god that grants him his power. And he's like, don't give him anything. And he controls Steven's body where he shuts his hand. And the guy's like, give me it. And he's like, I'm trying. So this whole thing goes back and forth where like he can't control his body and he just like walks away and they go to chase him and he blacks out. And I like how they do the whole like you just kind of see him faint and that's Mark Spector taking over. And then he wakes up again and there's like dead people all around him.
Yeah.
He's got no idea what the hell is going on. And then the chase in the cupcake truck. Yeah, should go. That needs to go into the geeky.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for that next week. Because that was funny. He finally gets out because the whole town is coming after him now. Because obviously, again, cult leader, right? So the whole town is coming after him, and he's like, "I'm sorry, I didn't do anything. I didn't mean it." And he jumps in a cupcake truck of all things and runs away. So they chase him down a mountain, and
I love that it's peaking out at like 40 miles an hour and he's having to go around all these hairpin turns and shit.
The whole time the god thing is talking to him. Like every time he wakes up, he's like, the idiot's back.
Yeah. And one time the one of the guys jumps in the cupcake van, and all he can do is like smush a cupcake in his face, and then he blacks out. When he wakes up, he looks back and like that guy's dead. He's holding a
He's got the
gun.
gun in his hand. Then they get in front of no. Then he's traveling backward.
Right.
Remember, he's going backward down the damn thing.
Yep.
He's got the gun, and they're following him, and he throws the gun, and then you hear, "Did he just throw the gun?" There were so many funny little things that happened in here just because of that character.
Yep.
But
And
it was funny because I kept like I knew how long the episode was. It was only about like 45 minutes. And I kept like, are they not going to show the actual costume at all this episode? Which I would have been kind of okay with, but I was afraid it was like going to completely lose Heather if like it didn't at least progress somewhat. And we'll get there. But yeah, that whole thing where he somehow gets out of there. Oh no, he finally passes out again, and then he wakes up in his bed, and he thinks it's all a fucking dream.
He thinks it's a dream, yeah.
Yeah.
And he wakes up back in the restraints, but tape's not missing, no sand.
No sand,
sand.
right.
So he's happy because he wakes up and he's like, oh, thank God. Like it was
it was just a dream. Now, prior to that, there was the other key that made me laugh, and I appreciated the way they write this in there, was before he left the museum, that pretty woman came walking over to him, talking to him about whatever, and like, hey, we still on for, Friday night or whatever, and he was like, yeah, me, you want to go out on a date? And she's like, that's funny, and she walks away. At that, right as soon as she said that, I laughed. I was like, she's talking to the other guy, right? Like, I knew it, right? So when he wakes up in his bed and thinks that was all a dream, he goes about this whole thing and then goes out like he's going on the date, and he's waiting and waiting, and then finally tries to call her. And she's like, you got a lot of nerve calling me. And he's like, you said, where have you been? He's like, I'm sitting here waiting for you to have steak. And she's like, yeah, that was 2 days ago.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh shit. Like he takes big chunks of time just out of his life because of this personality. So it was a cool way to write that and to show it,
The other thing is he's got this fish that's only got one fin, right? So it swims funny. It's got like a Nemo thing. And when he gets back and he wakes up from the dream, I can't remember if it's before or after the date, but I think it's before, because he's looking at the fish and he's like, that's weird. It's different. It seems like a different fish. He takes it to the pet store and she's like,
In a blender.
Right.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't have time for this. He goes, oh, I have a date. But it's not the same fish. It either got bigger or it got a second fin or something.
It was
really not
the original fish was missing a fin, and he made that comment when he was calling his mother and leaving her the voicemail or whatever. And then when he came back and saw it again, it had two fins, and he's like,
and it was bigger. It was definitely a bigger fin. So like they don't just grow another fin. It's just like it had two fins on the left ear. And then she says in that conversation, it had two fins when you picked it up last night.
Right.
So something happened to that other fish. Probably Mark Spector forgot to feed the fucking thing.
Yeah.
Because he was out on a mission and it died, so he replaced it. I bet that's what you're gonna find out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a reasonable explanation.
The other thing is he sees this weird worn spot on his floor. Because he's so upset about missing the date that he's binge eating chocolate bars or chocolate somethings, and he drops them, and he sees this worn place on the floor that fits where if you drag the table over, that would happen. So he drags the table over, stands on it, sees a loose panel on the wall where he reaches in, and there's a cell phone, sort of an old flip phone, and a key.
Mm-hmm.
And he's trying to figure out what those are. And he sees that there's like a bunch of missed calls from a girl, and there's one name on there. So like a Julia or something is a whole bunch of missed calls, and then one.
Layla was the missed calls.
Layla.
I forget what the other name was, but it was like a guy or something.
Yeah. So he calls Layla, and she, she's like, I don't understand what's She's like, "Where have you been? I was worried."
She says you've been gone for weeks, Mark.
Yeah.
And he's like, why are you calling me Mark?
Right.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Who do you think I am?" And then she hangs up and he can't get her again.
Right.
But there's no idea. They don't let on to what that key is yet.
No, not yet.
So big differences from the comic side of it. Just as a point of discussion, since none of us have read, and I was I'm reading it, but he has 3 identities in the combo. The Mark Spector one is an ex-Marine turned Merc. He's the one that gets left for dead in the desert and is the reason that there's a Moon Knight. The Stephen Grant is another personality, but he's the Bruce Wayne in the comics. He's the millionaire guy. So that's clearly not the case here. And he has a 3rd identity called Jake Lockley, who thinks he's like a cab driver in New York City. So I guess we'll see where they go with it. Stephen Grant's clearly not a millionaire, Bruce Wayne type here. So they've done something completely different. So who knows? Who knows how they're going to play this all out?
Yeah, no, but and again, going back to how we talk about like how you change up source material and stuff like that for these characters, this is actually a perfect character to do this with. Because not a lot of people really follow Moon Knight, and I mean, like I said, I'm like a diehard Marvel guy, and I even barely know half of his shit. So, I'm sure like the 5 Moon Knight fans out there will probably complain about something, but for the most part, it's a good MCU take on Moon Knight. So what else happens? Is this when it goes back again to the museum? And because we're getting toward the end already. I mean, it's only 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that happens. Well, I mean, fairly quick, but in his apartment building.
Yeah,
he's trying to like leave down the elevator, and the Moon God is kind of. Yeah, go ahead.
He hears the Moon Knight voice say something to him, and he starts looking around his apartment for it, and then the lights flicker and it feels like an earthquake. So he runs out. He ends up.
Well, yeah, that's when he first looks at his reflection in the dark, and the reflection doesn't quite move.
Right.
And it kind of cocks his head at him, and then he turns the light on. And he just sees himself there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there was that, and then there's the
So he runs.
And there's also the other thing too. Twice in here, he's leaving messages for his mother. Right, like he's having a long conversation with his mother and leaving her voicemails.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if like somewhere along the line we're gonna find out like his mother died.
Right, his mother's been dead for a long time, probably something like that.
Yeah.
So I thought that too.
I would think if it depends on how they play it, but if this is not the real guy, it's a secondary personality, there is no fucking mother.
Right.
He doesn't have a mother, he has one he made up, I guess, for himself.
That's true.
Who knows? Who knows though?
So the Egyptian god, he goes running out of the apartment, and while he's running, trying to get away from the earthquake, the elevator door opens up, and you see in the dark the god standing there at the end of the hallway, and he goes to shut the elevator, and it grabs the elevator door. He slinks down to the floor and looks up, and there's this old woman that lives in the building is looking at him like, "Hi."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, hey, lost my contact." So she's obviously just like put off by him.
Yeah.
Just gets off on the 5th floor, like hurrying up.
Yeah.
Like, get the fuck away from this guy.
Yeah, she's like, I got a friend that lives here. Yeah, I'm going to visit.
He's expecting me. Yeah, I should be here right now.
Yeah, banging on the door like a maniac.
Right. Let me in.
So yeah.
I think then he runs off, gets on the bus to, I assume, head to work. Yeah, he was heading to work.
Yeah.
And Arthur Harrow ends up being on that bus.
Yep.
Well, because he sees the god on the street watching the bus, and then disappears. So he hurries up to get off the bus. And so basically that was like that god character saving his ass, getting him away from the Arthur character. But as he gets off, he sees Arthur on the bus staring at him, and he's like, okay, you were real. So he realizes more and more that something's going on.
Yeah, again, just going back to what I read on the comics, the Arthur guy actually gets his powers from the same god. Different powers, but they come from the same god. So
Right.
it may not necessarily be directly opposed to each other, although it feels a lot like that here. However, though, when he gets to the museum, tells the guard, somebody's following me. He's talking about Arthur Harrow. Don't let him in. And they eventually sees him. They run into each other in the museum, and Arthur's doing that, corners him, and he's doing that judgment thing on him. But the scales never settle, and he looks at him and he's like,
well,
he tries
to get one of the guards to help him. Remember?
Yeah.
He's
the guard shows him the arm.
Tattoo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A cult member or
a
whatever.
bunch of them around him that are in on it.
Yeah, but when he judges him, though, it doesn't work, right? And he's like, he says something like, "There's chaos in you." I think that's
he says there's great chaos in you. And
then he tells all the cult folks, just let him go.
Let him go.
Let him go. So that may be a reference back to them having powers from the same god or whatever. And he's picking up on it or something. But he ends up staying late doing inventory, right? And the museum is closed and they're turning all the lights off, and he starts walking off, and then he hears
a dog.
Hears something. Yeah. Dog, is that what it was?
Yeah, he heard a dog whine.
And so he starts walking back that way because he's a glutton for punishment. I mean, there's no other reason at this point that he should be going towards some fucking random noise in the dark.
Yeah, I think enough's happened now that you learn.
But yeah, so it's not a dog, it's some kind of crazy wild ass I don't know, Anubis looking wolf.
Well, that's what I was gonna say.
Mummy wolf dog, yeah.
And when you see this shadow, it looks like one of those Anubis dog statues that you always see, but obviously moving. And then you hear Arthur over the intercom, and I love, what does he say? He says, what is it called? He says, "Hello, Stephen Grant of the item shop," or some shit like that, right? Stephen Grant of the gift shop.
That's how he introduced himself back when he was in the German country. He's like, he called him a mercenary. Oh, that's right. Arthur calls him a mercenary. And he's like, no, I work at a gift shop. And he's like, all right, Stephen from the gift shop.
Yes, yeah. And he calls him in again over the intercom, which made me laugh because it's always that, like, I guess fish out of water, like doesn't quite understand what the hell is going on. You get those characters once in a while in movies that are really funny. And he's like, give up the scarab, because he explains that it belonged to whatever goddess he's trying to resurrect to cleanse the world. And he says, give up the scarab and you won't be torn to pieces. So he throws his bag, and that Anubis wolf thing attacks the bag. He makes a run for it, and the thing sees him and chases after him, and all the way down the damn hallway. And he finally locks himself into a bathroom, right? And this was, I really enjoyed this scene, the way they shot this, because the other thing, did you guys catch? You had to catch it when he first walked into the museum that night. When he walks by the mirror, his reflection stays and just stares at him. Yeah, because that was the Mark Spector side of him. So he's locked in the bathroom, and he's panicking, trying to figure out a way out of there. And this thing is like tearing up the door. And then Mark actually starts talking to him, which hasn't happened yet this episode. It's always been the Moon Knight god talking to him.
And it's cool because there's mirrors on both sides, so you get that sort of endless reflection thing. And as he walks, one of them stops.
Yeah.
Right, and looks at him, and that's the one that talks to him. It's like, I can help us. I think, does it say I can help us or I can help you?
I can help us.
Yeah.
He's like, I can save us. And then
he's like, you got to let me take control, is what he tells him.
Yeah. And there's this whole back and forth between them where Steven's like, this isn't real. And Mark's like, you need to listen because this is really happening.
Yeah.
He's like, this is happening. This is all real. Let me save us. And then finally he gives up and does the whole pass out thing where Mark Spector takes over. And as soon as that happens, that's when you start to see the bandages of the costume start to come on him. And it barely even makes it on him when that thing breaks in and jumps his ass. And I was like, oh, he's fucked up. But the way they shot it was so perfect because it jumps in, jumps on him, and the thing the camera pans out real fast to the outside of the bathroom. And then all of a sudden you see like a sink go flying out the fucking bathroom.
Yep.
And then the dog thing is trying to get out,
Yeah.
scrambling, gets dragged back in. And then there's Moon Knight beating the piss out of this thing.
Yep.
Stands up, does the superhero over the shoulder look at the camera, and then cut to black.
Yep. And 6 minutes of credits.
Yeah.
Because in these, you have to watch or at least fast forward because you can't just turn it off, right? Because it might be something.
And for the most part in the series, I think we're good for the first couple of episodes, but you never want to take a chance.
Right.
Because I don't know how many times.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, I don't know how many times we sat here and looked at it and gone, there's got to be something left. And then there's not.
Yeah.
And then finally we're like, I don't think there's anything left. And then all of a sudden there's something there. And you're like, motherfucker.
I feel like WandaVision had one every time, but none of the other shows did. Not until the last one.
Yeah.
You still got to watch through it every time.
Yeah. Yeah. We're trained by Marvel. So yeah.
I was gonna say there's some strange imagery in those closing credits too. Like there's like a modern city like in the background, but it's all wrecked. There's a bunch of moon stuff, but then there's this thing where it goes to like a magnifying glass and there's like a golden ring inside of it. Like I don't know if any of this has anything to do with anything or if it's just fucking random imagery for the closing scenes, but there's like a large tower. It looks like the Tower of London from like above the water, but then in the reflection, it's a different tower in the water. Like it's a completely different tower in the water, and there's pyramids, and I don't know. There's a bunch of stuff in that imagery. I don't know what the hell it's supposed to mean, but I'm sure it has some relevance to the character,
well,
to the comic that I just don't know about.
The other thing that Marvel does really well with their credits too is one, the credits are relevant to the show, but two, most of the shows that we've watched, the credits change ever so slightly somehow. Like Loki, the different files that they were looking at had something to do with the episode, or whatever. Like the Hawkeye one, eventually it finally became like where, spoiler alert for Hawkeye if you haven't seen it, but Kingpin is looming over the city in the credits, so there's all kinds of shit in there. And it's like, oh wow, okay. So, all right. So overall, I mean, episode 1, obviously we all said it was fucking weird, but what did you guys think?
It's enough to keep me watching. I want to know what's gonna happen. I kind of hope it's not all told from the Stephen Grant perspective, because like what we missed out of this is other than the closing, whatever, 5 seconds, 10 seconds of action before you see Moon Knight, you miss every time he comes out, right? Like it's just, for you, it's just a weird face roll, eye roll in the head, cut, bam, now we're in a different scene. I think they just did that for effect in the beginning, so you could understand his plight, but hopefully they're not going to keep doing that, because then we'll miss all the good violence and everything that's supposed to, I mean, oh yeah, you know what, this is worth talking about too. So, sorry to jump off topic, because I know you asked a specific question, but this is the first TVMA anything on Disney Plus, and there certainly wasn't any TVMA in this episode. So I don't know why they've rated it that way, but I'm assuming it's going to get.
I mean, there was a dead body in the back of the truck, and there was blood on his hand and everything a couple of times.
Yeah.
So
I guess.
But
we don't do. There hasn't been a lot of blood in these shows before.
That's true.
No, but what's convenient is if you realized over the whole spring break, Disney Plus added all of the Netflix series, right? When they did, when you first logged back into Disney Plus, it said came up with a little thing on there that said, "Hey, you can access all the content now, whatever, blah blah, for like your whole menu, but you had to re-input your password and then
Yeah, I had to change my
actively
privacy
select.
settings.
Yeah, change your privacy settings to select the TVMA,
Yep.
which I did for everybody except for Noah. But so that was one step for them because I remember they said that they had already dropped all the Netflix shit on Disney Plus overseas, and we had talked about it. We were like, I wonder what it's going to be like over here if they're just going to put it on Hulu because that's more advanced. But no, they just so it's the step in the right direction for as far as adult fans of this kind of shit that they can get all this stuff still in one place at Disney Plus. But now this show being TVMA on top of those shows already being that is another big step toward Deadpool 3. Now, I don't think Disney's going to go as far as to show pegging on National Women's Day, but you never know. You never know.
Yeah, well, I guess that'll be the question. So TVMA and R rating theater stuff is still pretty far apart.
True.
As far as what you can get away with.
We're stepping in the right direction, especially since Kevin Feige straight up said, hey, we're sitting down talking Deadpool 3 and it will be R-rated. So, I mean, they're pushing it. I mean, especially for a company that's, and without getting political, has been very jumped onto, what everyone's calling the woke bandwagon and everything. I was shocked that they would do this much. Never mind, and try to push the R rating. I wasn't sure they were going to do that, but I'm glad they are.
Yeah, I like I said, I'm surprised. Yeah, I think when we talked about this before, I thought for sure this kind of stuff would end up on Hulu. They wouldn't put it on Disney Plus, but
yeah,
no qualms apparently.
No.
Dunzo.
Nope.
Which makes me wonder about other stuff, cutting shows out or editing scenes. Like, why did you do all that if you were just going to make Disney Plus, TVMA in the end anyway?
Yeah, because they did cut a couple things out, even in Falcon and Winter Soldier. They went back and re-edited some stuff.
Yeah.
So that it wasn't as.
I had read this morning that was not on purpose, but I don't know. It's not an official Disney statement, but.
How do you go back in and edit something not on purpose? Yeah, how do you edit
like
things?
that they had made a sort of less offensive version of it or whatever, but that wasn't ever actually supposed to be put on the Disney Plus. I don't know. The excuse was something about a version control error that ended up putting this in place of what's supposed to be on there. I don't know if it was an edit made for another country or what the reasoning was, but supposedly they're going to put it back now. But at the same time, I see that and I see no official statement from Disney, and then I think, well, they did it, people caught it, bitched. Now they're just going to put it back and be like, no, it was an accident. You fucking people.
Yeah. Intern Bob got fired.
But, they definitely do. They do edits of shows for different countries, like China in particular, where they do special cuts of shows and they do it for them, and that's what gets played there. So it's possible, but I don't know. It seemed arbitrary. There was a scene with blood. That they cut out, and there was something else that I don't remember now, but they both had to do with violence.
Yeah, Winter Soldier throws a piece of rebar or a bar at.
Stabs through the chest. That's right.
Instead of stabbing him, it bounces off him or some shit like that, or knocks him back instead of impaling him.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, all right. So we're all in for next week's episode, so that's cool. We'll actually try to stay on top of it since we're reviewing it the day after it came out. This is fucking shocking.
First time for us.
I know. The month has
rare that
it had a day to do it.
I'm proud of me. Look, it's usually me, so I'll say it.
It's rare that all three of us watch something like the day of launch. Really, that doesn't happen very often at all.
It is. When
I
Paul
feel
told
like
me
they-
earlier that he had watched it, I was convinced that Eric had somehow managed to miss it. And I was going to be like, we need to get 2 more hosts so that there's always 3 of us that have watched something.
Well, I think the other shows have been dropping on Fridays.
Which is
Right.
hard.
And so we record Thursdays, and so there's always been 5 or 6 days for us to watch them. I don't feel like they've been dropping on Wednesdays.
Yeah, you
No,
might
there's
be
a
right.
Am I wrong about that?
There's
I-
1 or 2. That
I don't
they-
remember, but you might be right.
So yeah. So all right. Well, we will be back for next week for Moon Knight episode 2, and we are going to do our 4th annual Geeky Awards, where we always do this corresponding the Oscars. So honestly, none of us even realized the Oscars were even coming out the other day or last weekend until something happened over the internet. I'm not sure what.
Yeah.
Um,
I read something about.
All I'm
something
going
at
to
the
say is don't keep my podcast out your motherfucking mouth. Like, damn. So we'll talk about that next week. That we won't be as topical on. But I'm sure we'll cover it in the beginning. Anybody got anything else on Moon Knight before we close it out? Cool.
Nope.
All right. Well, in that case, hit us up. Let us know what you think of episode 1 of Moon Knight. Comment down below. Like, subscribe, ring a bell. Hit us up at whatifgeeks.com, whatifgeeks@gmail.com, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and all that happy shit. And until then, until next week. Good night, Tony.
Good night, Stephen Grant's mom.
Oh man, what am I gonna do now? Nobody died really.
Good night, random thug and a cupcake man.
Yeah.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, that'll work. I was gonna say good night, old mummy lady.
Yeah.
Forever.